On October 2, 2020, Christopher Dontel drove through the streets of Conway, South Carolina, with Megan Jackson in the passenger seat. As a Horry County deputy coroner, Dontel was familiar with death, but nothing had prepared him for what was about to unfold. Jackson directed him to make a U-turn and pull up next to Gregory Rice, her ex-boyfriend and father of her 4 children. As he walked toward his apartment, what happened next would shatter lives and expose a web of deception that had been building. For months, Jackson opened the car door and fired multiple shots at Rice, striking him in the head, chest, hip, and leg. As Rice collapsed on the pavement, Jackson shouted at Dontel to help her load the dying man into their vehicle. The body of Gregory Rice would remain hidden for a month, wrapped in a tarp and weighted down with a cinder block at the bottom of the Little PD River. When investigators finally recovered his remains, they uncovered not just a murder, but an intricate conspiracy involving adultery, manipulation, and betrayal that reached into the highest levels of local government. The case appeared straightforward. A jealous ex-girlfriend had killed the father of her children with the help of her lover. But 3 years later, in a packed South Carolina courtroom, the trial would take a stunning turn that no one anticipated. The very man who had helped dispose of Rice's body would deliver testimony that would shock observers and change the entire trajectory of the case. The affair that began in a local bar would end with one of the most dramatic courtroom betrayals in recent memory. Conway, South Carolina, sits in the heart of Horry County, a region known for its proximity to Myrtle Beach and its tight-knit community where professional relationships often blur into personal ones. In 2020, the area was like many small southern towns where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business, and local government officials were familiar faces around town. Christopher Dontel embodied the image of a respected public servant. As deputy coroner for Horry County, he was responsible for investigating deaths and providing crucial services to grieving families. Married with children, Dontel appeared to lead a stable life anchored by his professional responsibilities and family commitments. His wife Erica trusted him completely, viewing their marriage as solid despite the financial pressures they faced during the COVID-19 pandemic. Megan Jackson presented a more complex figure in the community. At 40, she worked as a body transporter, a job that put her in regular contact with funeral homes and coroner's offices throughout the region. Jackson was the mother of 4 children with Gregory Rice, her long-term partner, though their relationship had become increasingly volatile. She was known for her outgoing personality and willingness to help others financially, traits that masked a more manipulative nature that few people recognized until it was too late. The relationship between Megan Jackson and Christopher Dontel began innocuously at a local bar that Dontel frequented regularly. Jackson started appearing at the establishment with increasing frequency throughout 2019 and early 2020, gradually building a connection with the married coroner. Their conversations evolved from casual interactions to more intimate discussions about their personal lives and problems at home. Jackson's approach was methodical and calculated. She learned about Dontel's financial struggles and began positioning herself as someone who could provide support and understanding. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when both families were isolating together, Jackson moved into a house just 2 streets away from where Dontel lived with his wife and children. The proximity allowed her to integrate herself into his daily routine. While maintaining the appearance of a helpful neighbor, the manipulation extended beyond emotional support. Jackson began providing financial assistance to the Dontel family, buying groceries from Sam's Club and taking them out for dinner. 2. Dontel's wife Erica Jackson appeared to be a generous friend, helping them through difficult times. In reality, Jackson was creating a web of dependency and obligation that would later be used to control Dontel's actions. The affair between Jacha and Dontel developed gradually over several months. Jackson used her knowledge of his professional responsibilities, and personal vulnerabilities to deepen their relationship, while ensuring he remained emotionally invested in helping her. She presented herself as someone who understood the pressures of his work and could provide the support he wasn't receiving at home. During this same period, Jackson's relationship with Gregory Rice was deteriorating. Rice was the father of her four children, and their long-term partnership had become increasingly strained by financial pressures and personal conflicts. Jackson had grown resentful of Rice's presence in her life, viewing him as an obstacle to her future happiness with Dontel. By October 2020, Jackson had decided that Rice needed to be eliminated permanently. She began planning his murder with the same methodical approach she had used to seduce Dontel. Jackson knew that she would need help disposing of Rice's body and covering up the crime, and she had already identified Dontel as the perfect accomplice. On the evening of October 2nd, 2020, Jackson contacted Dontel and asked him to drive her to Rice's apartment complex. She told him she needed to discuss custody arrangements for their children, presenting the trip as a routine visit to resolve family matters. Dontel agreed to provide transportation, unaware that Jackson was carrying a loaded weapon and had already decided to kill Rice that night. When they arrived at the apartment complex, Jackson instructed Dontel to position their vehicle where she would have a clear view of Rice's apartment entrance. She waited patiently for Rice to emerge, maintaining casual conversation with Dontel to avoid raising his suspicions about her true intentions. As Rice walked toward his apartment, Jackson told Dontel to make a U-turn and pull up next to where Rice was walking. The request seemed unusual, but Dontel complied without questioning her motives. When their vehicle came alongside Rice, Jackson opened the passenger door and immediately began firing multiple shots at him. Rice was struck in the head, chest, hip, and leg, causing him to collapse on the pavement. The attack was swift and brutal, giving Rice no opportunity to defend himself or escape. Jackson had positioned herself and Dontel to ensure maximum surprise and lethality in the assault. After shooting Rice, Jackson immediately began issuing orders to Dontel, who was in shock from witnessing the sudden violence. She demanded that he help her load Rice's body into their vehicle, threatening him with death if he refused to cooperate. Jackson made it clear that they were now partners in the crime and that Dontel's survival depended on his continued assistance. Together, they lifted Rice's body into their vehicle and drove to the Myrtle Beach funeral home, where Dontel had access through his professional connections. Jackson directed him to store Rice's body in the facility's cooler, buying them time to plan the next phase of the cover-up. She warned Dontel that if he told anyone what had happened, she would kill him, and that they had to remain united in their deception. The following day, Jackson instructed Dontel to purchase supplies for disposing of Rice's body permanently. Dontel went to Lowe's Home Improvement and bought a tarp, ratchet straps, zip ties, and a cinder block. He was operating under Jackson's direct orders and threats, but he was now fully implicated in the conspiracy to conceal Rice's murder. Between late October 3rd and early October 4th, Dontel followed Jackson's instructions and dumped Rice's wrapped body into the Little Petey River. The weighted remains sank into the dark water, where Jackson believed they would never be discovered. She had successfully eliminated Rice and enlisted Dontel as her accomplice in both the murder and its cover-up. Detective Sarah Martinez of the Horry County Police Department received the missing person report on Gregory Rice on October 5, 2020, just 3 days after his murder. The report came from Megan Jackson herself, who claimed she had been unable to contact Rice and was concerned about his welfare. Martinez, a 15-year veteran of the department, immediately noted the suspicious timing and Jackson's demeanor during the initial interview. Jackson's account of Rice's disappearance contained several inconsistencies that raised Martinez's suspicions. She claimed that Rice had been acting strangely in the days before his disappearance, suggesting he might have left town voluntarily. However, Rice's personal belongings remained in his apartment. His vehicle was still parked outside. And there was no evidence of planned travel or unusual behavior. Martinez began building a timeline of Rice's final days through interviews with neighbors, family members, and coworkers. The investigation revealed that Rice had been following his normal routine until October 2nd, when witnesses last saw him near his apartment complex. Security cameras from nearby businesses showed Rice walking toward his apartment around the time. Jackson claimed to have last spoken with him. The detective's examination of phone records revealed troubling patterns in the communications between Jackson and Rice in the weeks before his disappearance. Their text message exchanges showed increasing hostility and threats from Jackson, including references to custody disputes and financial disagreements. Martinez also discovered that Jackson had been researching legal procedures for gaining full custody of their children. A breakthrough came when Martinez obtained Jackson's cell phone location data through court-authorized warrants. The digital evidence showed that Jackson's phone had been in the immediate vicinity of Rice's apartment at the time of his disappearance, contradicting her claims about being elsewhere that evening. More significantly, the data revealed that Jackson had not been alone. Another phone belonging to Christopher Dontel had been tracked to the same location at the same time. Martinez's investigation into Dontel's background revealed his position as deputy coroner and his access to facilities and resources that would be valuable for concealing a murder. The detective obtained warrants for Dontel's phone records and discovered extensive communications between him and Jackson in the weeks before and after Rice's disappearance. The messages revealed an intimate relationship that neither had disclosed. During initial interviews, security footage from various locations throughout Conway provided additional evidence of Jackson and Dontel's movements on October 2nd and 3rd. Traffic cameras captured their vehicle traveling to and from Rice's apartment complex, and retail security systems recorded Dontel purchasing supplies at Lowe's home, improvement that would later be connected to the body disposal. The investigation took a significant turn when Martinez learned about Dontel's professional access to the Myrtle Beach funeral home. Surveillance footage from the facility showed Dontel entering the building during unusual hours on October 2nd and 3rd, carrying items that were not part of his normal work duties. The funeral home's refrigeration logs showed unauthorized use of the cooling system during the same period. Martinez coordinated with Marine Patrol units to begin searching waterways throughout Horry County, focusing on areas that would be accessible to someone familiar with local geography. The Little Petey River became a priority location due to its proximity to both Jackson's and Dontel's homes and its reputation as a dumping ground for various types of contraband. On November 3, 2020, exactly 1 month after Rice's murder, Marine Patrol officers recovered his body from the Little Petey River. The remains were wrapped in a blue tarp and secured with ratchet straps, zip ties, and weighted down with the cinder block items that matched Dontel's purchases at Lowe's. The body showed clear evidence of multiple gunshot wounds consistent with the ballistic evidence recovered from Rice's apartment complex. Forensic examination of THS, examination of Redelt's remains revealed the extent of his injuries and provided crucial evidence about the weapons used in his murder. Ballistics analysis of bullet fragments recovered from the body matched ammunition types commonly available in the area. The medical examiner's report confirmed that Rice had died from the gunshot wounds, with the head injury being immediately fatal. Martinez's team executed search warrants at both Jackson's and Dontel's residences, recovering physical evidence that connected them to the crime. At Jackson's home, investigators found ammunition matching the ballistics evidence, along with documents related to custody proceedings and financial records showing her deteriorating relationship with Rice. Dontel's residence yielded receipts from his shopping trip to Lowe's and clothing that tested positive for traces of Rice's DNA. Digital forensics analysis of Jackson's and Dontel's electronic devices revealed the full scope of their relationship and planning for Rice's murder. Text messages between the couple showed discussions about eliminating Rice as an obstacle to their future together. Jackson's internet search history included queries about body disposal methods, local waterways, and legal procedures for single mothers. Seeking custody of their children, the investigation also uncovered evidence of Jackson's manipulation and control over Dontel's family during the months leading up to the murder. Financial records showed that Jackson had been providing monetary support to the Dontels while simultaneously isolating Christopher from his wife and creating emotional dependency. Bank statements revealed payments for groceries, restaurant bills, and other family expenses that created a pattern of obligation and control. By December 2020, Martinez had assembled sufficient evidence to support arrests for both Jackson and Dontel. The detective coordinated with prosecutors to ensure the charges reflected the severity of the crimes and the level of premeditation involved. Both suspects were taken into custody and charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and kidnapping, setting the stage for legal proceedings that would expose the full extent of their conspiracy. The case against Megan Jackson and Christopher Dontel appeared to be a straightforward prosecution of two co-conspirators who had worked together to commit murder. Both defendants had been charged with identical crimes, and prosecutors expected to try them together as equal partners in Rice's death. However, as the December 2023 trial date approached, developments behind the scenes would completely transform the case's trajectory. In the weeks leading up to trial, Dontel's defense attorney began exploring plea bargain options with prosecutors. The negotiations revealed the first signs that Dontel might be willing to cooperate against Jackson in exchange for reduced charges. His legal team argued that Dontel had been manipulated and controlled by Jackson, portraying him as a victim of her psychological manipulation rather than an equal partner in the murder. Conspiracy: the breakthrough came when Dontel agreed to undergo extensive debriefing sessions with investigators, providing details about the murder and Jackson's role that had not previously been disclosed. His accounts revealed that Jackson had been the primary architect of Rice's murder, with Dontel serving as a reluctant accomplice who feared for his own safety. The revelations painted a picture of systematic manipulation and coercion that extended far beyond what investigators had initially understood. Dontel's cooperation revealed disturbing details about Jackson's planning and preparation for Rice's murder. According to his statements, Jackson had been discussing the need to eliminate Rice for months before the actual killing occurred. She had researched methods for committing murder without detection and had specifically chosen Dontel as her accomplice. Because of his professional access to body disposal resources, even more shocking was Dontel's revelation that Jackson had threatened to kill him if he refused to participate in the murder or if he ever disclosed what had happened. According to his testimony, Jackson had made these threats immediately after shooting Rice, making it clear that Dontel's survival depended on his continued cooperation and silence. The threats had continued throughout the month-long period. When Rice's body remained hidden in the river, the manipulation had extended to Dontel's family in ways that prosecutors had not fully appreciated. Jackson had deliberately created financial dependency by providing money and gifts to the Dontels during the COVID-19 pandemic. She had positioned herself as indispensable to their economic survival while simultaneously isolating Christopher from his wife through their secret affair. The strategy gave her multiple forms of leverage over Dontel's behavior and decision-making. Dontel's accounts also revealed the extent of Jackson's deception in reporting Rice missing. According to his testimony, Jackson had filed the missing person report as part of a calculated strategy to deflect suspicion while creating an alibi for Rice's disappearance. She had coached Dontel on what to say if questioned by police and had prepared elaborate cover stories to explain their activities on the night of the murder. Perhaps most shocking was Dontel's revelation that Jackson had discussed killing additional people who might pose threats to their relationship or their freedom. According to his statements, Jackson had mentioned eliminating his wife Erica if she became suspicious about their affair, or if she learned about Rice's murder. The casual way Jackson discussed these potential killings demonstrated a level of callousness that stunned investigators. The cooperation agreement between Dontel and prosecutors was finalized just days before jury selection was scheduled to begin. Under the terms of the deal, Dontel agreed to plead guilty to accessory after the fact and criminal conspiracy in exchange for his truthful testimony against Jackson. The agreement represented a complete reversal of the prosecution strategy and transformed Dontel from co-defendant to star witness. On December 4, 2023, in a packed courtroom filled with Rice's family members and media representatives, Dontel entered his guilty plea before Judge Stephen John. The plea hearing represented the first public acknowledgement of his cooperation with prosecutors and set the stage for his testimony against Jackson. Legal observers were stunned by the development, which had been kept secret during months of plea negotiations. The announcement of Dontel's cooperation sent shockwaves through the community and Rice's family members, who had expected both defendants to face equal punishment for their crimes. Jackson's defense team was forced to completely restructure their strategy, as they could no longer rely on shared culpability between the co-defendants. Instead, they would need to attack Dontel's credibility and portrayal of Jackson as the sole mastermind behind Rice's murder. The revelations also exposed the sophisticated nature of Jackson's manipulation tactics, which had extended beyond her relationship with Dontel to include systematic deception of his family and community members. Her ability to present herself as a helpful friend while planning murder demonstrated a level of psychological manipulation that prosecutors argued made her extremely dangerous to society. Jackson's reaction to Dontel's cooperation was reportedly one of rage and betrayal, according to sources close to the case. She had apparently believed that Dontel would remain loyal to their relationship and would never testify against her. The realization that her former lover was now working with prosecutors to ensure her conviction marked the final collapse of the conspiracy that had begun with their affair in a local bar. The trial of Megan Jackson began in January 2024 with intense media attention and a packed courtroom filled with Gregory Rice's family members, community supporters, and legal observers eager to witness the unprecedented cooperation between former co-conspirators. Prosecutor Sarah Hubbard faced the challenging task of presenting a case that now relied heavily on the testimony of a man who had participated in the very crimes he was describing. Jackson's defense team, led by attorney Michael Johnson, adopted a strategy focused on attacking Dontel's credibility and portraying him as the true mastermind behind Rice's murder. Johnson argued that Dontel was lying to save himself and had manipulated the narrative to minimize his own culpability while exaggerating Jackson's role in the conspiracy. The defense contended that Dontel's professional knowledge and access to disposal resources made him the more likely leader of the murder plot. The prosecution's opening statement painted Jackson as a calculating manipulator who had systematically destroyed the lives around her to satisfy her own desires. Hubbard described Jackson's seduction of Dontel, her financial manipulation of his family, Kay, and her cold-blooded execution of Rice as parts of an integrated plan to eliminate obstacles to her happiness while creating disposable accomplices to handle the dirty work. The most dramatic moment of the trial came when Christopher Dontel took the witness stand to testify against his former lover. Under direct examination, Dontel provided detailed testimony about Jackson's planning for Rice's murder, her threats against his life, and her manipulation of his family's financial situation. His testimony was methodical and specific, providing prosecutors with the direct evidence they needed to prove Jackson's guilt beyond reasonable doubt. Dontel's testimony included disturbing details about the night of Rice's murder that had not been previously disclosed. He described Jackson's calm demeanor as she planned the shooting, her ruthless efficiency in executing Rice, and her immediate assumption of control over the cover-up operations. According to Dontel, Jackson had shown no remorse or emotion after killing Rice, instead focusing entirely on ensuring their mutual survival and freedom. The cross-examination of Dontel by Jackson's defense team was intense and combative, with Johnson attempting to portray the former coroner as a manipulative liar who is sacrificing Jackson to save himself. Johnson highlighted inconsistencies in Dontel's various statements to police and prosecutors, suggesting that his testimony had evolved to better serve his plea agreement. The defense argued that Dontel's professional knowledge of body disposal made his claims of reluctant participation implausible. However, the prosecution reinforced Dontel's testimony with extensive physical and digital evidence that corroborated his account of Jackson's leadership role in the conspiracy. Cell phone records, security footage, and financial transactions all supported Dontel's version of events and contradicted the defense's alternative theory of the case. The testimony of Dontel's wife, Erica, provided additional insight into Jackson's manipulation tactics and the systematic way she had infiltrated their family life. Erica described Jackson's seemingly generous financial assistance during the COVID-19 pandemic and her gradual integration into their daily routines. Looking back, Erica could identify the red flags she had missed, but she acknowledged that Jackson's deception had been sophisticated and convincing. Expert testimony about psychological manipulation and coercive control helped the jury understand how Jackson had been able to influence Dontel's behavior and secure his participation in Rice's murder. The prosecution argued that Jackson's methods demonstrated premeditation and sophistication. It's criminal thinking that went far beyond a simple crime of passion. The defense's case relied heavily on character witnesses who testified about Jackson's positive relationships with her children and her reputation in the community prior to Rice's murder. Johnson argued that Jackson was a devoted mother who would never have committed such a violent crime, suggesting that Dontel had manipulated her into participating in his own murder plot. After 6 days of testimony and evidence, the jury began deliberations on Jackson's fate. The panel faced the complex task of determining whether Jackson was the manipulative mastermind described by prosecutors or the manipulated victim portrayed by her defense team. The cooperation agreement with Dontel had fundamentally changed the case's dynamics, but questions remained about the credibility of a witness who had participated in the crimes he was describing. The verdict came after 8 hours of deliberation. Jackson was found guilty of murder and criminal conspiracy, validating the prosecution's theory that she had been the driving force behind Rice's death. The jury apparently accepted Dontel's testimony and the supporting evidence over the defense's alternative narrative. On January 25, 2024, Judge Stephen John sentenced Megan Jackson to 20 years in prison for the murder of Gregory Rice and criminal conspiracy. The sentence represented a significant victory for prosecutors and provided some measure of justice for Rice's family, though it could never restore the father that 4 children had lost. Christopher Dontel received a substantially reduced sentence under his cooperation agreement, highlighting the dramatic difference between being a cooperating witness and a convicted defendant. His decision to testify against Jackson had saved him from a potential life sentence, but cost him his career, his marriage, and his reputation in the community. The case exposed the dangerous potential of workplace relationships and professional access to resources that can facilitate criminal activity. Jackson's ability to manipulate Dontel through their affair and his coroner position demonstrated how personal and professional vulnerabilities can be exploited by determined criminals. Rice's family continues to struggle with the loss of a devoted father and the knowledge that his murder was planned and executed by someone he had trusted. The 4 children he left behind are being raised by family members who work to preserve his memory. while helping them process the trauma of his violent death. The affair that began in a Conway bar ultimately destroyed multiple families and ended with one of the most dramatic courtroom betrayals in South Carolina's recent legal history.